I'm gonna grab some coffee. I'll be right back, guys.
Awesome.
I'm still hearing that echo a little bit on your end.
Yeah, it could be my mic.
It could be my mic.
Yeah, that seems good now.
All right, guys.
Welcome
to the
to
TrendSpider
the TrendSpider live stream webinar.
We're
We're in our
trade room currently. Also live on YouTube.
live on
This is
YouTube. This is going to be recorded so you guys can watch it
So
later. So if you're in the
trade room and you gotta
take a
leave of absence
in this part of the webinar, don't worry if you guys can check it out later on our channel.
And we got
Jake and Dan in here with us.
Say hello, guys.
Hello. Glad to be back on the show.
Awesome.
So
Jake is going to be
showing us
some technical
analysis using TrendSpider.
Some of the new features
potentially
that have come out since the last
live stream that we did with these guys.
And
Jake is
going
to show us
just the way he uses the
TrendSpider platform. We'll go through a couple
symbols,
and if you guys have things that you want to look at,
just let us
know in the chat, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, that'd actually be really cool if people wanted to ask about a stock, we can pull it up and just see kind of how the system looks at it based on the trend lines and the fib levels. So that'd be kind of a cool experiment.
Yep, that's awesome. Yeah.
Well, I will let me know when to get started, and I'll kind of just start my spiel. But I'm definitely going to do the broad markets, and then we'll push to any questions at the end.
Sounds good, man.
Do your thing. Take it away.
All righty. Well, thank you guys for having me. Definitely want to thank Bullish Bears for always kind of having us on to let everybody see what's new on the platform and really how to use the platform on a day-to-day basis and kind of in a real-life situation. So I'm going to take a look at SPY, QQQ, and XBI. These are generally kind of the three ETFs I'm looking at for kind of broad market direction. And so first of all, with SPY, it's interesting to see here. We've got really this wedge kind of forming with the EMA 50 and then this previous trend line from the all-time highs back in October or right at the end of September. So definitely want to highlight kind of how I'm using the system to find out where we may be going from here. So to start off with, we have an alert right on the EMA 50 below. As you can see, the EMA 50 has really been the area that price action has gravitated around. So before we really broke down in October, this was the area of support. And then when we broke down, this was really the area of resistance before the big breakdown. So we are now have broke through this area, and we are kind of riding right along it. And so as we get the EMA to move closer towards price action here, we're really getting to this apex at the triangle here. So what I really wanted to do is show how not only will I be alerted when the price action goes below this area into this EMA 50 zone, but we can also do it at the top. So I'll create an alert here. Generally, I don't like to be too sensitive here. And what I mean here is when I move this button, the sensitivity feature is going to increase or decrease. And that's just showing where the price action is going to be alerted in any time that it gets in this area. So in this case, we'll move it maybe down. I really like to sometimes line it up with where the bodies are or where the wicks are. So in this case, I really want to kind of capture these two bodies right here. So I'll keep the sensitivity right here and have it alert me on the 5-minute time frame. So anytime that the 5-minute time frame gets anywhere within this area and closes, I'll be alerted. And then same thing on the bottom here for the EMA 50. So regardless of the direction, I will be alerted when kind of the volatility enters back into the picture. So we'll just do, let's say, resistance above, and we'll have it set for 7 days or triggered one time. And just to make sure, we do need to add our triggers here. So we'll do breakthrough, touch, or a bounce, create the alert. And now we're really set up for either way, whether the price goes up through this channel or down through this kind of wedge area. So this is really useful, especially when you don't want to have to stare at the chart constantly, especially if you're looking at maybe 5 to 10 charts at a time. You'll be alerted right when these criteria are met, without having to do much on your end or staring at the chart. So we're really aiming to make trading and technical analysis more efficient. And whether that be through your style, through somebody else's style that you're following, you can really make this very customizable to how you do your technical analysis. One thing that I wanted to show as well is the price alerts. So we have shown the alerts on the trend lines and the indicators, but now we also have the ability to create these multi-factor alerts. And I did go over this a little bit last time, but one thing that I want to kind of show that I'm using it for right now is on the weekly candle. And so when I pull up the weekly candle here, I'm going to have to change the vortex. And so notice here, the vortex indicator looks very different with the vortex 25. When I change this to the 10, it's going to show us a very different pattern. And so now what we can see, anytime that the vortex indicator really got within this area on the weekly candle on SPY, we started to kind of reverse. So one thing that I really am watching for right now is the fact that we're very oversold on the Williams percent range. We're very, I don't want to say very oversold, but we are lower than we really were over here. Now, obviously, we're at a higher price range here, so we're going to be lower on the RSI. So this is going to be a really big one to watch. If we start to break out here, that's really going to kind of change the theme to more of a bullish kind of possible situation into mid-year. Now, we do have the vortex indicator starting to move down here. So that's why I am a little kind of cautious. And so what I've done is I've created an alert for whenever these start to break down. And so I'll go just here, I'll go to edit. And so what I have is I have these different criteria where essentially when they start to break down, these different rules will become true. So the first one that I mentioned is the Williams percent range. We want to be alerted when this moves down below -20. So when the weekly Williams percent range is less than the constant value of -20, that rule will become true. And so we can do that now with the RSI. If the RSI breaks down below the constant value of 50, we will then be able to be alerted when that occurs. And the last one that I have on the lower indicator side would be the vortex indicator. Whenever the blue, which is the positive, is less than the negative, so essentially when these cross, that
A little bit of a lagging, but not as much as your other indicators. Am I correct in that, or can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, so rather than really a momentum oscillator like the percent range or the RSI, it's gauging when trends are really reversing. So, here you're 10, and for me, any different indicator I'm on, I'm looking for divergence. So a big part of this is kind of seeing when they diverge and then start to converge here. That is really where you can start to see the trend reversing. So, for example, here, when we had this big divergence, we could see that the trend was becoming exhausted. And then finally, when it crossed here, that's when we kind of had this confirmation that, all right, this may be a bigger move down. And notice how the EMA 50 right here was also that area of support below. So, as far as the math goes, I'm not huge onto the math side. I really use it more to just judge where the trends are rather than getting too deep into the math. But the percent range and the relative strength are more momentum, where the percent range is looking kind of for the intra-week or the intra-days, and that's where you're getting these readings from. And so the vortex kind of complements where that math is coming from kind of a trend reversal side of things.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that really explains it a lot easier because I've messed with other indicators labeled as vortex indicators, and I was just curious on the ideals behind it. But thank you for that. Yeah, please continue in what you were doing. So
Yeah, so one thing I want to mention is with the math behind any of these, the math is always going to change based on what input you're on, right? So for example, when I'm on the 10 period on the weekly, the 10 period on the daily is going to be a lot different because there's going to be different candle time frames you're looking at within the math behind it. So as much as like this layer of indicators matters, it's really about being able to optimize whatever input you're looking at. So in this case, we're looking at the percent range 20 weeks back. That's where this 20 comes from. And then in this case, the RSI, we're looking at the last 10 weeks. So changing the input really changes how these can move as well. So for example, if we moved the percent range down to, 5, it's gonna look like an earthquake, seismograph essentially, because there's so much noise there. You'll kind of see here that there's a lot more ups and downs, a little more false signals. But the cool thing is too, when you use the percent range, sometimes you can see that when the percent range becomes overbought, but the RSI is still not overbought, it can be an area that there's more room to move up and that momentum is really starting to pick up. And also you can see how the vortex indicator was confirming that with the red crossing below the blue here. So really being able to use the inputs in a different kind of way and kind of understanding how those match up is really important in technical analysis, I think.
yes, for sure, and understanding which actual time frames work best with the inputs that you have for those indicators are going to completely dictate how those indicators are viewed and how you as a trader are able to utilize them in your trading.
Yep. So for example, like in the Vortex Indicator 10, I'm usually using this on the weekly. However, on the daily, I'm usually using the 25. And so it's you kind of have to adjust the math based on what time frame you're on. But that's kind of how I'm looking at SPY right now. And on top of that, the problem is this is almost becoming so obvious here that it may break down. But we do have a very interesting head and shoulders here on the weekly that is really starting to form. First shoulder here, we've got our head, and now our next shoulder, which is really kind of coinciding well with this previous area of resistance. And so, yeah, whenever these conditions that I had mentioned here, and where is that potential breakdown? Whenever these all start to become met, I'll be able to kind of go in and check to see which things have become true, which are not. So, for example, I'm also watching CHK right now. And so one thing that I'm watching there, and this I'll have to go to the daily, is the potential breakdown. And so kind of the same thing we can see on CHK. When we look here, the percent range has become less than -20. So that is one of the rules that has become true. And now we're waiting for all of these others to also become true. So you can see here, percent range is breaking down. The RSI is breaking down. We will be alerted once the RSI is less than 50. So we can see here, whenever we really break right below this area, that condition will become true. And then, of course, we have the vortex indicator as well. When that crosses, we will also be alerted. So this is kind of a real life situation where I'm using the indicators and the features in an actual trade. I've been trading CHK really since this started moving up in this wedge. And a lot of the time I've been using these rules to alert me whenever these criteria become true. And it's been very helpful for me trading CHK when it starts to kind of break out, also and reversing. So that's another one I'm using for really as a way to watch oil. I know CHK isn't necessarily purely an oil company, but it does move pretty strongly with oil and is a pretty high beta proxy there. So just another one to keep in mind. We are getting very tight within the apex of this wedge. So it will be interesting to see if the EMA 50 can hold this area or we get a bigger breakdown here.
So I do have a question for you in your experience in using it. Would you mind using Amazon, for instance? Since that's one I know a lot of us have used, and it is a higher price ticker. It's nice to see how the TrendSpider system both works on low price stocks and high price stocks, because I've actually utilized it for both, but I'd love to hear it from another trader.
Yes, definitely. So here we may have to mess around with the lower indicators here, just the way I'm looking at it. But the cool thing is, notice this line right here. This is called the truth line, truth and analysis line. And that is essentially the last time the system has looked at how the trend lines are set up based on the data to the left of this line. So when I pull up the trend lines here, these are the trend lines that are kind of pulling up. Now, these trend lines are actually all created from this line right here. So it's pretty cool to see how this previous trend line that was created back on February 14th for Valentine's Day, for all you romantics out there, you know, we perfectly touched this area without having to touch the chart for the last over a month. And so it's kind of cool to see how the system has looked at the chart in a specific time period, and then how the price action has reacted after that. Now, when I go here and do refresh and lock, this is actually going to change now, because these are all the most relevant areas with all of the relevant data now. So notice how the truth and analysis line is right at our daily candle now. And all of these lines are now actually the most relevant lines on the chart. Now, one feature that we did add recently that will make everyone's life a lot easier is, at the end of the day, TrendSpider is really just using different calculations and different sets of trend lines to come up with these lines. Now, let's say in this case, we think that the red lines are very noisy. We can just go here and remove all related trend lines, and all of those red lines are going to disappear. And so you don't have to remove each line individually. And so, for example, you can remove this trend line easily just by one click, or you can use the shift button. So for example, if I want to get rid of this, I can just click shift, click it. Oh, I'm sorry, we do have a bug on the manuals right now. On the regular ones, it works. So for example, anytime you want to remove any line, you just shift and just left click. Anytime you want to remove a whole set of lines, you just right click on it and then remove all related trend lines.
I really like that feature. That's something I've been utilizing a lot lately. And in the trade room, I've mainly this week been using, I've been trading in Facebook, and mainly the TrendSpider system is what I've been using. And I got to give it to it. The lines and indications, they've been spot on. So I do like the right click feature, because I've actually had to use that for my own hand-drawn lines as well as some of the time frame shifts. So really good stuff.
Thank you. And the cool thing too is, let's go down to the 10-minute. You know, the app is working on any time frame. So same thing. If we want to, we just refreshed it here. So these are all the most relevant trend lines, but the same thing. Let's say we really aren't too interested in the red lines, remove them, and then we kind of go to the more relevant lines if these are what you're looking for. Now, the cool thing is, these are not just the only lines that we're looking at, right? And we've gone over this a couple times in previous webinars, but you know, these are just lines based on these trend preferences. If I want to change up the preferences, I can easily change this to original, experimental, or if I really want to get kind of very technical, I go to advanced and I can start changing the base points. And this is really the base kind of technology that we're based on, right? So these different lengths of distance between candles is really how we're drawing trend lines. So when I go and change this, from enhanced to original, you'll see that these base points are changing because we're changing the distance at which the system is looking for trend lines. And so, you know, that is really kind of a way that you can make this very personalized you can really mess around with the base points and try to find a setting set that really draws the lines for kind of how your style is. So in my case, I really like enhanced. I really like for the system to look for wick to wick touches. And I do like to have the system respect gaps, meaning actually sometimes I ignore them. And essentially what that means is whenever you have a gap on the chart, the system is going to take that into account when drawing the trend lines. So if you want the system to ignore these kind of gaps in price and islands, if you will, notice when we kind of gap up, there's an island created, and then this island essentially lasts until there's another gap. And so that's how the system kind of looks at gaps and uses those in the analysis. So when we change this, based on these criteria I just chose, now the system is looking at this differently.
I like that. That's really interesting too, because some traders, they get really, with respect, freaked out about gaps in general and how to trade them. So being able to customize TrendSpider now to either ignore or look at those gaps in its data analysis, I can really see how that would hone in. It almost reminisces of how Ardan uses his Fibonacci that's been custom designed to his styling. So I really enjoy the personalization you guys have actually brought into the system.
Well, we really appreciate that. And the cool thing too is before we just made these different criteria, we weren't really catching this symmetrical wedge. And so now with these trend settings, I'm able to kind of catch the price action within this wedge. And kind of a cool case study here on Facebook. Let's remove this. If we remove this line and start to look at the lower indicators here, this is kind of a textbook breakdown. We've got really the percent range starting to break down first, the RSI starting to break down as well, and then we do have the Vortex Indicator starting to cross here. So it is interesting to kind of see this setup, honestly. And you could easily go in, create the multi-factor alert. Let's say we want to do the 10-minute let's do the Williams percent range is less than constant value of -80. And then we'll do the same thing, the 10-minute RSI is less than, let's do, previously this area was about 40 that it found support. So let's be alerted anytime it's less than the constant value of 40. And then finally, we'll add that 10-minute rule for the Vortex Indicator. When the positive is less than the 10-minute negative, we will be alerted. So we're essentially set up here on the lower indicators. So I'll go and create that alert. Let's just name it possible breakdown. 7 days expires or triggers once. And we'll create the alert. So now that is in for a possible breakdown, and we can follow that as this happens. Now, the cool thing is we also want to look at this trend line. This has been a pretty strong area of support previously, and so we can now create an alert here as well for if the price action does start to break down. We'll just go, breakthrough, touch, bounce, have an alert on the 5-minute, and we'll just let's do wedge support. And now we're set up on this side as well. So if this trade did continue to break down, we would be alerted when these kind of conditions occur and when the price action touches this trend line, and that would tell us maybe it's time to cover our short, sell our put, whatever you're thinking on the short side. So that's kind of an interesting way you could use TrendSpider right now trading Facebook.
So as well, too, one thing I'd like to highlight along with it is the breakout feature. So that's one thing I did actually know. Yeah, the little breakout highlight. I found that super helpful to identify what I think versus what the true algorithm is seeing. So,
So yeah, we can see this here. We tried to break through and then kind of came right back down. So the system will catch whenever the next candle kind of closes. And so we did have the breakout, and now we're kind of closing through it here. So I'm glad you guys like that feature, and it's definitely nice to not have to draw 20 different circles showing where prices have broke out and broke down.
For sure. So would you mind touching on how it actually, and it's been going on in the chat, how it actually identifies certain patterns? So I know there's different ways to see a tweezer bottom and things of that nature. Would you mind touching on that just a little bit for the newer people to TrendSpider?
Sure. So are you talking about patterns as far as candlesticks go?
Yeah, candlestick patterns primarily.
Okay. Yeah. 1 second. So essentially, we have the ability to really find different candlestick patterns on the system. So we have a huge library right here that you can choose from. It's well over 50 different patterns. And the way we do this is we simply just define these rules mathematically. In this case, we just use Bolkowski's definition. So whatever his definition is, it's coded into the system. And then whenever it occurs, let's say we want to look for a hammer, we will find all the different hammers on the system that are true to Bolkowski's definition of a hammer. And so you can see here, this is a cool example where the price action bounced right on the EMA 50, and then the system found the hammer, and then we had a big move up. So this is one way to kind of add a back testing feature to your system. So you can say, all right, well, I want to look at the last time there was a hammer and all of these other conditions occurred on the bottom. And so you can really add this to your alerts as well. So for example, if we wanted to change, this breakdown on CHK, and let's say we wanted to add different bearish candles, we can really do that as well. So we'll go to the daily candlestick pattern. Let's do 3 black crows. And so the system will automatically then pick up when this pattern occurs with these different criteria as well. So it's not only just on the visually shown on the chart, you can actually include these in your alerts as well.
I honestly did not know about being able to include them in the alerts as well. I'm actually going to have to add that to my section. And the question was asked is, how can you really back test and utilize with it? And as far as like a strict all the way back test, I don't believe you have that. But one way that I know I've shown others on my system to use it as a back test is with his definitions there, you're able to see the next occurring results from previous actions there. And it allows you to see what you should look for versus what may happen. It just lets you have the idea of what could happen primarily after you see this indication of a hammer or tweezer bottom, tweezer top, anything of that nature.
Mm-hmm. One thing that we are getting at, I'm going to push this on the development team, but right now this is one feature that we really can't customize further, right? So the trend lines, you can customize how the system looks for the trend lines and automatically detects them. But here we are really kind of stuck on the Bolkowski definition at the moment. Now, the cool thing, what we're getting to is the ability to define your candles differently. So for example, if you don't want to see a hammer only after one candle down, you can go in and define and say, only show me a hammer after 10 candles down and a 5% drop or bigger. And so you're really able to kind of use that to add to your uniqueness of however you're looking at the candles or certain formations.
That's really good. I like that you're able to, that just shows a lot of initiative on your guys' end as well, being able to give us those tools. One thing I want to put too is, if I remember correct, you can still get push notifications after the alerts, correct?
Correct, on email or your phone or both. So for example, you just go to account settings, and when that pulls up, you can choose email and SMS, and that will connect you to the alert system, and you'll be able to get alerts both on your phone and your computer.
Awesome, awesome. Well, what else would you like to show us going into it? What kind of future plans do you have for the system as a whole, like Q2, Q4, something of that nature?
Sure. So we are really trying to get this customizable candle kind of thing in the next couple months, hopefully. I would really love to get to the point where you just click on a candle and you can automatically define that candle and have the system kind of lock that in. So for example, here, you know, we've got this hammer candle that for me is a lot more textbook than this. So if I'm able to click on this and have the system kind of automatically recognize that as what I want to look for in the future, we would really like to get towards that. That's going to take kind of some machine learning, which we're not there yet, but that is kind of an ambitious goal we have. But before that, we do want to be able to customize the candles. We do want to be able to have our alert system be integrated into a watch list. So for example, let's say you've got all of the different stocks here on the S&P 500. You can go in and add your criteria from your alert and be alerted when any of these stocks have that criteria occurring. And so it will be more of a screener where you can really follow a lot more stocks within a watch list.
I like that. That's cool. So another question I have for you, and it reminded me when you said integration on that. Now, I understand if it's a company thing you can't talk about, but I know there was rumor and talk before about possible integration with brokerages to get some of the same data. Do you think that's still something we could see later on, maybe next year or a year after from TrendSpider, broker integration with the analytics of the software?
I was going to let Dan jump on and answer that, but you know, I think it's definitely something we are considering. We hear a lot about that, ask kind of questions about that, but I don't want to make any promises on the time frame. But it is something we are definitely looking at and think would add a ton of utility to our users, and that's really anything that we add to the system. That's what we're focused on doing, is adding utility, making things easier. Sorry, my dog's going crazy. Yeah, so we're trying to get to that point when we have the resources available, and I think as we move along in this year, that will become a possibility for sure.
Oh, that is awesome, and I can understand not wanting to put a time frame, because that's a lot of work. A lot of work people don't quite understand on the back end to do something of that nature. That is a big step for anyone. So.
Yeah, and if we did do it, it's not like there's going to be a ton of different brokers at once. We'd probably start out with one or two and then grow from there. And that's kind of how we would probably do it. But it's something that's definitely in the works, something we definitely talk about, and will be definitely very useful to people who want to make trades on the same platform they're doing their analysis on.
That is stellar. Well, I'd also like to invite TrendSpider Dan. If you'd like to, come on and say anything with us, maybe something I've missed or something you want to mention that Jake might have possibly missed. I mean, we're trying to cover the full gambit here, but, we really want to give you guys the chance to show everything. We love the work you've been doing.
To interrupt Dan before he gets on real quick, one thing I did mention forgot to mention, is the Fibonacci alerts now. So, for example, if we want to do the daily overlay, the daily candle with, let's say, the weekly fib overlay, we can do that pretty easily. Let me remove this and this. And we'll see when I turn this on, the fib, we've got obviously kind of the weekly fib levels. Now, what's really cool is with a couple things, you can see the price action really respecting this 78.6% retracement level really nicely from the weekly. And let's say we wanted to be alerted whenever the price action gets down to the 61.8% level, just create alert at this line. And essentially, you can then create the same alerts that you do on trend lines or indicators on the Fibonacci level itself. So it's a way to use horizontal levels with alerts right now. That's something we're working on. And we really want to get to the point where you'll be able to draw your own Fibonacci levels and kind of have the system, not be as automated and give you the ability to complement your own discretionary technical analysis and complement it with the automated side of things.
Oh man, that's killer. I look forward to being able to do that, and I think Bullish Bears Dan as well. I know he's going to want to go in there and put his little tweak on those Fibonacci's. So.
It's and that's the thing. Everyone who trades has a little bit of a different system that they use. And so we're not here to say, hey, these are the Fibonacci levels that are exact. These are just the ones that the system is catching based on the mathematical settings we have in the trend lines. You'll see here when we change original, well, in this case on the weekly it's the same, but when we go to the daily, the original is actually going to change when we go back to enhanced. So this is the Fibonacci level on original, and then this is the Fibonacci level on enhanced. It will change. It will become a lot more kind of sensitive, if you will, to the most recent action. So it is something you can change, but we're going to make it a lot more robust where it's easier to change.
That is some good stuff. Some good stuff. Well, there we go, guys. You have Jake on this side of things. Dan from TrendSpider, is there anything you'd like to bring into the conversation? Any other stuff we might have missed? Inviting you on. If you have nothing, then we can close it here. But if you got some other stuff, please come on and let us know.
He may not have mic capability either.
Okay. I wasn't quite sure on that. Well, on that note, guys, here in the chat room, while we have them on, do you have any questions? Anything you want to ask as far as the system wise? Anything on the system you've been curious about, you want to see, something like that? Now's the time to ask it. I'll give you a couple seconds here, but if not, we'll go ahead and close it down. So I'll give you a 30 count. So we do have two questions. The Bullish Bears 30 code. Well, I'll have to on the sign up. It should be right there on the login page. We'll get with you, Little Shark, on that and get that one figured out. Jake, any word on Canadian stocks?
That's a great question. That's another one we hear a lot, is if we're going to introduce different markets. Right now, we do not have any set plans on when we are going to add those, but it is kind of another thing that we are aware of and would like to address at some point this year.
Very cool. Very cool. Question was asked, what were the updates from 4 days ago? A lot of the general stuff that we spoke here, as far as some minor things as well, Thomas. So just little nuances as well as these larger aspects from what I know. Jake, is there anything that I might have missed on that?
So the biggest features that were released was the create alert button here. So before you had to go here and kind of add the plus button. But now you can go in, create alert, and you can choose whether it's on the indicator trend line or a multi-factor alert. And so that was new. What else was new? We did a couple things to the watch list as well. So a lot of the back end stuff at this point, there wasn't anything that was really kind of newer, just a lot of updates and kind of improvements.
Awesome. Okay, yep. And Dan from TrendSpider posting a link there. All the updates are posted to the blog, so awesome stuff. Alrighty, well, seeing no other major questions or anything like that, Jake, any final words?
Thank you guys so much for having me on, and we look forward to hopefully having some newer features to talk about in our next webinar.
Alrighty, awesome. Hey, Jake, again, thank you, and good luck in the market. I look forward to a little bit of a hidden battle back and forth. We'll see who's going to win, the Bears or the Bulls. But other than that, guys, thank you very much for everything you do on our end. As much as we've been able to help you out as well. Look forward to continuing a great relationship with you and everything y'all have coming out in this year and in the coming years. I do wish you the best in your business ventures. Other than that, peeps, that's everything we've got for today. So do make sure you keep an eye out. This was recorded, so we will have it up on YouTube. We'll try and get it out today if we can. Obviously, we got to do a few things on the other end, but at latest, probably tomorrow-ish. But it will definitely be on the main Bullish Bears channel. Make sure you check out the blog post that does have the discount code in it there. And other than that, that's all that I've got for you. So as always, remember, your trades are in the history. We'll see you around.
See you around, guys. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.
Awesome.
Great, guys. Thank you. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed the webinar. So there you go. Again, watch out for the recording. Dan, Jake, anyone, if you got any last things we might have, missed on there, now's a good time to say it. But, man, that's some killer stuff.
Hey, like I said, we're thankful for you guys to have us on, and I really would love to have some new stuff to introduce next time around. And if anyone has any questions at all on the alerts, how to set the alerts, please feel free to reach out at hello@trendspider.com, or you can just reach out on social media as well. We will respond to either.
Awesome. That is great. So, alrighty, guys, I'm going to teeter off for now. I've got to go do a few things on my end. Bullish Bears, Dan, I guess if you want to come on and it doesn't echo through, I'll give it to you, man. Otherwise, guys, I will see y'all tomorrow. I'll be starting the stream a little bit early to get some nuances out of the way. Going to put that playbook together. But, Jake, again, thank you for everything. Dan at TrendSpider, thank you as well. Otherwise, guys, take it easy and have a safe and wonderful weekend.
Hey, thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys, still got the YouTube Live going. Can you guys hear me on YouTube Live? Tony, you still want to see the gold price? Cool. All right, guys. So hopefully you guys got to catch most of the live stream. If not, we mentioned that it'll be recorded for you guys. Tony asked about gold price. I don't have access to the GC, but if you upgrade your TrendSpider, you can get access to, of course, all of the different future symbols. Looking at the daily and weekly chart, I have just daily and weekly trend lines highlighted. And you can see right here, this has been a pretty big, important gravity line that gold has been oscillating around. It also got above the weekly trend line resistance. Because I'm accenting both daily and weekly trend lines, the second accent trend lines are dotted. So these are all these dotted lines are all weekly trend lines that are major resistance for gold. You can kind of see a pretty big inverse head and shoulders, but it's possible that we're going to be trading in a range on GLD from this 121.30s level all the way up to this 125.75. There's just, it looks like we're range bound for a while. I would be more concerned of more of a downtrend on gold if you started to see GLD printing daily, weekly candles below 120.50, and then back into the teens. Then you're talking gravity starting to take over, and we're more likely to backtest this weekly trend line. So a lot of times I'll turn off daily trend lines and I'll just look at weekly trend lines. So I've got daily candlesticks versus a weekly chart, right? Versus weekly trend lines. And here you can see really clear, this looks like the range that we're stuck into. And again, if we start printing below these weekly trend lines, we could be in for, a bit of a head and shoulders. We could come all the way back down to 114, which of course would, drag gold with it. So another thing you can do is you can get rid of all the trend lines and you can just look at your moving averages. So maybe you want to take the daily 50 SMA versus the 200 SMA, and you want to look for those crossovers, right? So you got a death cross here, you got a golden cross here, right? Maybe you want to look at a golden cross on a weekly time frame, right? And so it looks like you might have a bit of a, if we go back, we can't really go back too far, but we haven't had any crosses of the weekly 50 and weekly 200, but they are getting closer, right? So when they start getting close like this, volatility might start to pick up, and eventually either the 50 weekly is going to turn up or it's going to turn down and lead to, a bigger downtrend, and you have price dropping below the weekly 200 SMA. And what's cool, depending on your style, whether it's trend lines in or Kettler channels, Bollinger Bands, whatever it is, let's say you want to be a buyer when this particular moving average is struck or bounced, touched within a certain point, you create that alert and it saves it, and then you just set it and forget it and wait for the stock price to come down to you. I'll show you guys real quick. Amazon has been super helpful using TrendSpider today. If you guys look at a 5-minute chart with some daily moving averages, let's put on you got the 9 EMA daily right here. 20 you can't really see. You can see let's see, where the heck am I right here? Oh, there we go. Daily trend lines, right? So there's some daily magnets. And what I find interesting is when a lot of stocks, when they are oscillating around their daily 9 EMA, which of course is a fast moving average, helps you find momentum. You can actually see patterns that will form around it, and it'll help you get buy and sell signals, right? So yesterday when Amazon got below, it oscillated above, below, kind of traded in that range. You could see daily trend lines were trapping this, right? Trapping price. Right now we're kind of trapped underneath this. There's actually 2 trend lines here that kind of overlapped. And there's a potential inverse head and shoulders setting up here. This being the head, potential right shoulder, left shoulder, maybe breakout. But you can watch all of these different 5-minute trend lines and how moving averages react. You can put your 5-minute 9 EMA. A lot of times I'm talking on the live streams about how, using a 9 EMA for momentum is super helpful, even on a 5-minute chart. And so you can see we've got a 9 EMA crossover the 9 EMA daily. This trend line has rejected it, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 times, and then price could pull back and retest the line that it really broke out of, right? You got this green circle showing you a breakout was back tested, and we might pull all the way back here, or we might break this line, and this will help you place your trades, whether it's on a 5-minute chart. If you're a day trader, swing trader, it really doesn't matter. I know, pot stocks are very popular right now. A lot of people are talking about them. Are they in sell mode, buy mode? What's going on? You can look at daily charts, daily, weekly charts. Look at all these weekly trend lines. Look at the moving averages, and these are all mathematically drawn. It's just going to save you so much time, and not having to snap all these lines yourself. And did I draw them right? Is this angle wrong? Is this angle right? And you can really get a lot of good, useful information. Obviously, this was a major breakout line that was broken in January, and now we've come all the way back to it, really back tested it. So you could see a lot of bulls came in heavy on Cron today because of it, and now we've got this daily piercing pattern. And if we start to trend back above the 9 EMA daily, which is this green line right here, you might just create an alert. So we get above this 9 EMA, you're going to get alerted, and maybe that's where you place your buy, and then you might place your sell on the the next daily trend line, right? And then just trade your plan. So I got to run, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the webinar. We'll see you on the next one. We'll probably have another one in a couple, maybe a month or so, maybe a couple months, when some more features come out. Like they were saying, there's a lot of good stuff on the horizon for them. Awesome tool, definitely the most useful tool in the bag. And you guys can try it for yourself. I posted a link in the description and also in the chat, so you guys can try it for 7 days for free. Trust me, within 7 days, you'll know if you want to keep it or not. And my guess is that a lot of you guys are going to find the usefulness of it. So enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Trade safely. We'll see you next time.